Right, now we have the microphone. Very good. Now let us begin the meeting.
Before we receive the deputations to listen to their views on development of retirement protection in Hong Kong, I'd like to say this to you. We should wrap up on the 30th of September because subcommittees are set up only for a year at any one time. I'd like to ask members what you think. I don't think we can finish our work by the 30th of September. So members, do you agree that we continue with this subcommittee for another year? I see somebody nodding, so you agree? No other views, is that right? If that's the case, we'd like to extend the subcommittee. From which month should we count? I think we should extend till the end of this legislative session next year. Okay, thank you. Also like to say this to you members. We have to adjourn by 4:30 because we have the Finance Committee coming up, which will hold its meeting until 11 something. What about the next meeting? Would you like to have another meeting in August or in September? I talked to the Vice Chairman and both of us think that we should have another meeting only in September. What do you think? Okay, thank you. Our next meeting will be in September. We will first of all draw up the agenda before we come back to you. Thank you very much. According to the agenda, and actually according to our resolution last time, we have invited 6 deputations to come. They are the advocating parties, and 4 of which have agreed to appear today. But the New People's Party cannot come even if it said it would early on. And now we have 3 deputations with us. We also invited Professor Lui Ting Ming or Richard Lui, and also Dr. Nelson Chow, as well as Dr. Law Chi Kwong. But Dr. Law gave us a PowerPoint report of his proposals, even if he's not coming. So today we have 3 deputations. I'd like to welcome them. Please find your nameplate and be seated. I'd like to thank the Secretary for Labour and Welfare for coming with his team. Also like to welcome people who are interested in the topic seated in the public gallery. Okay, please settle down. After you have settled down, I'd like to draw your attention that in front of you there are 3 buttons. If you have been here, you would know this. Channel 1 is the floor, Channel 2 is Cantonese, and Channel 3 English. You can use the earpiece, and you can also tune the volume to your liking. Also, I'd like to remind you that the administration has submitted a paper, and that is CB bracket 2 1880 bracket 02. We will invite the Secretary to go through that paper in a moment. And also I'd like to tell the deputations, since you are here to let us know your options, and we would therefore give you more time so you can detail your proposals to us. Every deputation will have 15 minutes. Also, I'd like to tell you that your remarks and submissions are not covered or exempted under the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance Cap 382. Also, I'd like to remind people in the public gallery that if you attend meetings in our conference rooms and if you are seated in the gallery attending the meeting, you should avail yourselves to the notice on security measures adopted by the Council. These are tabled in front of you. Please follow them. If you don't have a copy, please get one from the security guards. Okay, now Secretary, can you walk through your paper, please? Do you need 5 minutes? Well, yes, 5 minutes will be quite enough. Thank you, members and also deputations. Actually, this is a paper just to brief members on the discussion of the Commission on Poverty on Retirement Protection. Chairman, as we always do, every time we give you this progress report. So in fact, this paper has nothing to do with the topic under discussion today because this is a report on progress. I'd like to say that in the past few months, the COP, or Commission on Poverty, has been continuing with its work. On the 26th of June, we held a rather long meeting to prepare for the public consultation so we can have a framework set. As we said, by the end of the year, we will launch the public consultation exercise. On the 26th of June, the Commission continued to review the 4 pillars and the latest situation. We looked into different pillars, and in fact, on the meeting on the 26th of June, we looked at particularly Pillar 3, and then we decided that basing on the Census and Statistics Department's work in the 3rd quarter, I believe by the end of the 3rd quarter, there will be some updated data to be supplied by the CNSD.
And this will be on the population projections and also on the labor projections. And this will go all the way to 2064 in terms of time period of projections, that is a full 50 years. And we will use this as the foundation to renew and update the information for the Professor Chow, Hong Kong U team's analysis. And we will do a financial commitment analysis, and by then we will come up with new data and analysis for the public of Hong Kong and for the LegCo's panel. Now, the government is, of course, very concerned about retirement protection, and there is sincerity and commitment on the part of the government, and there is an earmarked $5 billion for that purpose, and we will report on the progress. $50 billion earmarked, and there will be progress reports. Members, that is to say there will be no delays to the timetable, but the government is also, the administration is also saying that the Census and Statistics Department's data will be released in September. Now, actually, I didn't want to go into this, but Secretary, you said that the survey will be in September. Well, you said actually end of the 3rd quarter. What exactly do you mean? Early, mid, late? September, please? Secretary. Well, Madam Chair, the data actually will be released by the Census and Statistics Department. They said that this will be around the end of the 3rd quarter. Well, if you ask me as to the specific date, I would say sometime in September, and we will right away carry out with the work, and this will be in time for the consultation before the end of the year. Now, can you give us the data at the same time when they release the information? Madam Chair, that depends on when the department will make public the data, because this is about projections on the population and also on labor. So we will have to wait for their data before we can do any updating. And we just heard that the next meeting will be in September, and I do hope that the release will be in time for our meeting. But on the other hand, in analyzing the data, we need some time. I hope you understand what I mean. Well, I understand what you mean. I hope you understand what I meant as well. Concerning future consultation, I think it will be good if our views, the panel's views, can also be incorporated. But if you're saying that we will have to wait for the release of the data from the department, then I hope we can be more coordinated. Madam Chair, I think we will have to coordinate with the department, that is the Census and Statistics Department, because this is really a very big exercise in terms of updating. It is not for the sole purpose of what we have in front of us, but really this is a regular exercise, and it is a huge exercise, and they will have to make the data public. Now, if we are going to have a September meeting, then we may well be able to take into account their data. But on the other hand, the end of year, that is for our consultation paper, we will have all of that information incorporated. Members, Dr. Chung, please. Madam Chair, concerning this point, I would like to ask the administration where they would want to invite groups or organizations to speak with the COP, because in the June meeting, Dr. Law was invited to speak about annuities. And there is the 6+1 proposal from Dr. Nelson Chow, or Professor Chow. And, well, of course, we can invite if the deputations or the groups do not come up, that's up to them. But today, we have 3 organizations coming up today, including yours, Madam Chair. But it is not just for this panel. Also, the COP should also hear from these deputations and these groups. So my question to the administration is, given the timetable, have you also taken that possibility into account? Madam Chair, for Dr. Law's annuity proposal, there are 2 reasons. One, he's also, of course, a member of the COP. Secondly, he earlier on, as we have seen from Professor Chow's report, the analysis is not complete, and therefore Professor Chow was not able to assess and analyze the relevant data. And that's why for Dr. Law, in his report, he said, or proposal, he said that he did not have the relevant analysis because there were a lot of hypothetical data and there was not sufficient opportunity for analysis because it had to do with annuity, amounts, etc. And that is why Dr. Law was not able to incorporate those into his proposal. Now, as for Professor Chow's report, of course, it had taken into account the political parties, different entities, suggestions and recommendations, and they're very clearly set out. Madam Chair, I find this very strange because I look at Professor Chow's report. He is trying his best to look into all the proposals and recommendations from within the community, and he's laid them out. And it is true, as the Secretary had said, Professor Chow found it impossible to do the actuarial or analysis on Dr. Law's proposal. And further, there may be certain ideological or conceptual distance between the two, and therefore there was not a lot of mention in the report. Therefore, he preferred to talk directly to the COP. But of course, Dr. Law is, of course, a member of the COP, and but on the other hand, this is not about affinity. Whether Dr. Law is a member of the COP is irrelevant. The important point is that the COP has a responsibility to map out the directions for retirement provision for the entirety of Hong Kong. So, wouldn't it be appropriate that Professor Chow should have a direct line to the COP in terms of communication so that the latter can have a full understanding? Because I've come across reports saying that after the May 26 meeting of the COP, Dr. Law had said that the proposal would be taken into account. The report will be taken into account in his report, in his proposal. So my question is a 6+1 proposal also incorporated? I do not know. So I think it is best that there is a direct line of communication between them, that is Professor Chow and the COP. Well, Madam Chair, there is a meeting of the COP next week, and we would be happy to invite the deputations and the groups and those who have made recommendations to Professor Chow and in the community to speak to the COP. Yes, that would be good. Any other suggestions or opinions? Well, there being none, we welcome the three organizations which have come up, and we are very happy to have the Joint Federation for Retirement Protection, and we have Mr. Chan Hock Fong as executive, and also the member of the Secretariat, Mr. Lau Chek-kei, to come up. Please do proceed. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, we want to talk about the Federation's information analysis and also some of the actuarial assessment results that we have done. And then, after sharing the information, we will also talk about some of the recommendations that the Federation has. Now, first of all, in terms of financing, perhaps you all know that there is a three-pronged financing or pillar for the contribution to retirement. First of all, the government, the employer or the corporation, and then the employee himself. For anybody over 65 years of age, there will be $3,250 after retirement, and this is 2013 value. And the government will set up a fund, and the CSSA and the old age provision will be put into, that is included into this fund as well. Now, as for the employer contribution, the employer and the employee will each contribute 2.5%. That is the MPF transfer, so there will not be extra contribution, and there will be an additional profits tax, which is 1.9%, and that's only applicable to funds over 10 million Hong Kong dollars. Now, there will not be any means test to this, and this is not the same as poor alleviation measures. And also for the MPF transfer, and this will not be an extra burden in terms of contribution, and also we want this to be sustainable over the peak of the height or the peak of the population in Hong Kong. And also, as we have noted just now, there will be a profits tax slappable on this at where the fund is rich or big. Now, I would want to debunk some of the misunderstandings concerning this, because very often we hear that there will be a bursting or unsustainability of the retirement scheme. In the 2015 policy address of C.Y. Leung, it had been mentioned that for Professor Chow's proposal, there will be a continuation. If it is continued or adopted in 2013 to 2050 time, there will be a depletion of the funds, that is the retirement funds resources. Now, and also the Financial Secretary had said that for Professor Chow's analysis, any calculations have pointed to an unsustainable nature of any of the proposals, and therefore there should be targeted funding or assistance to the needy rather than to go for universal retirement protection. Now, Professor Chow's report had been referred to, as Mr. Cheung had mentioned just now, and we want to know what exactly is in Professor Chow's report. Now, if we look at Professor Chow's report, this report actually is a product of the actuarial analysis from Professor Nelson Chow, and it talks about universal retirement protection by 2014. What would be the financial situation given that proposal? Now, at the peak, we see that there is a surplus of over 200 billion. And in the last few years, that is towards 2014-1, we can still see that the fund is over 127 billion Hong Kong dollars, which is to say that the CE and the FS, what they said, is completely opposite to what Professor Chow had pointed out. There is no insustainability to speak of at all. And this also goes to show why we need to be so strong in our opinion. Now, with this proposal very clearly laid out, it is quite strange that in the policy address there can be a wrongful or mistaken recap of the information. And it is not unsustainable, as we can see from Professor Chow's report. And there is mention of 2050 and sustainability all the way to 2050, but there is no mention of 2050 in the report.
That is why we'd like to directly address the COP on these issues. We are afraid that you have made use of wrong figures to mislead the COP and therefore affect the entire research and survey on universal pension. Some people say, well, of course, if the economy is good, if not, the universal pension fund will be totally depleted. But actually, some stress tests has been done by Dr. Nelson Chow. Supposing if there is a prolonged depression, including some crises or turmoil for a row of 5 to 6 years, with no recovery in sight, it is said that even in such a scenario, by 2041, there will still be $79 billion in the pension fund. Therefore, even if the economy is not going to be in a good shape, it is still sustainable. Other organizations have made use of different economic assumptions. In Dr. Chow's report, those have been mentioned. But we think there is an optimistic future for this pension fund. Even if some organizations say this is not sustainable under Dr. Nelson Chow's model, I think they have their reasons. But if the payout level is a little adjusted, I think the fund will still be sustainable. Therefore, I don't think people should still talk about total depletion of the fund. Dr. Chow did a very detailed analysis of that in this report, but the government chose not to listen. Now, I'd like to talk about the recommendations of the Alliance for Universal Pension. There will be consultation done in the latter half of the year. We believe the consultation must be premised on Dr. Nelson Chow's report. The conclusion of that report is simple, that there should be implementation of universal retirement protection. And secondly, we believe that the public consultation should mainly talk about financing universal retirement protection. So you should include the specific financing option of 6+1. the administration talked about making use of MPF, CSSA, and OAA, and everything would be lumped together in the public consultation exercise. We don't think that is appropriate. Those should be taken up separately. As we said, the COP should invite the 6+1 deputations to attend their meetings to explain their proposal. So all organizations have the chance to participate in the discussion. And Chairman, I know that we have asked COP members to attend this meeting many times, but still we don't see any COP members present today. We think this is quite problematic. The government is still working behind closed doors, and it is manipulating the COP. We believe you are still working behind closed doors, but in fact you should allow all organizations which have put forward options to introduce their recommendations to the COP direct. Also, within this term of government, there should be the drawing up of a specific timetable and roadmap for implementing universal retirement protection. This topic has been with us for decades. We ask this term of government to draw up a timetable and roadmap within its term. And also, before we have results of the consultation exercise, you should not have any particular stance and should not fabricate figures and data to negate this option of universal retirement protection. As we were saying, you were releasing wrong data to mislead the public that the fund would be totally depleted, that is not sustainable. I think this has an effect or impact on your credibility. Why do you do this? Are you trying to start conflicts and induce contradictions amongst people in society? As I said, the CSSA for elderly people and MPF reform, these should not be taken up together with the consultation on universal retirement protection, because the public will not know what they are consulted on and the focus will be lost. Now, we'd like to ask certain questions for immediate answers from the administration. Number one, in the coming public consultation exercise, will you focus on the discussion of specific financing options for universal retirement protection? And two, will our proposal be told the public in full, that our comprehensive option, would that be included instead of just the elements of our proposal? And also whether you are going to invite the 6+1 organizations to attend COP meetings so they can introduce their options to the COP direct. I hope these three questions can be immediately answered by the administration. Last point. We understand that the CNSD will release new data. I'd like to know whether the government will just add those new data into Dr. Nelson Chow's report to do some computation and projection, or actually Dr. Chow's figures are also based on certain assumptions, for example, the part to be played by government. I'd like the Secretary to tell me which one he will do. Okay, we'll listen to all deputations first before the Secretary will respond to your views. Next, the FTU Rights Committee, Mr. Pang Kong Chung. Thank you, Chairman. The CNSD information projects that people over the age of 65 will increase from over 940,000 in 1998 to 255,000 in 2041. In other words, there will be a big jump in this group of population. Therefore, the administration should set up a non-means tested universal retirement protection scheme early to make sure that the elderly can age without difficulty and also to put an end to poor elderly problems. With regard to the FTU's proposal, well, under the premise of deepening MPF, we'd like to have a tripartite financing scheme. We would go for the 5 pillars as proposed by the World Bank. And with regard to 0 pillar, we would like to go by the elderly CSSA system and improving upon it. When elderly people apply for CSSA at the SWD, with regard to personal assets, we should not ask their children to sign a certificate saying that they would not support their parents first. As for Pillar 1, there should be universal retirement protection. Every person who is a Hong Kong PR who is over 65 years of age should get $3,250. The funding should come from government, business, and the community. For the government, it should make use of the land fund, where there is $220 billion for forming a platform for protecting the public. And then these will be invested, and we would use the investment return on these every year to pay out to the elderly. And every year, with regard to the OAA and elderly CSSA and other payments, these should also be included. And also, a certain percentage of the budget reserve and also the government's annual expenditure, these will also be sources of payment. And if enterprises make more than $10 million profit every year, they should pay 1% more in profits tax so as to help fund the scheme. As for the community, starting from 2021, employers and employees should of course continue to pay MPF, but then they should pay 0.5% more each so that we have 1% more. And part of that will be injected into Social Security. So every month, employers and employees together will make 3% contribution for Social Security. As for the low-income group, under the MPF, they still do not have to pay any contribution. And the relevant investment should be looked after by the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. As for Pillar 2, we should reform the present MPF scheme. The 1% out of every 5% of contribution should be injected into Social Security, and there should not be any offsetting against long service payment. We should also have a public fund which can take care of inflation. As for pillars 3 and 4, we can still go for voluntary savings by the individual, family support, and other non-financial support. Last, our union and many other organizations and academics have put forward many non-means tested schemes to provide retirement protection, and many that have been improved upon by Dr. Chow will be sustainable. But then the government does not seem to be wanting to adopt any of these. I think it is a matter of political will. It is not that you can't do it. With the aging of the population, elderly poor problems have to be resolved fast. You must waste no more time in writing up your scheme. Thank you. And Mr. Kwan, would you like to add anything? Anything from you? Let me just say a little. As Mr. Pang just said, there are already 3 options which have been adjusted by Dr. Nelson Chow, and they should be feasible, and they have been verified by actuaries as well. Why are we still waiting? We have been advocating this since the 1980s, but we are still at the discussion stage. In fact, this is not the time to discuss anymore. We should be implementing the schemes now. As Dr. Chow said, in Hong Kong, we don't have Pillar 1. The best thing about universal retirement protection is then to allow us to have Pillar 1. CSSA is subject to means test. If you look at cleaners and security guards, they might need the CSSA help, but they would say this is social resources and I should not really ask for it. But then if we do not have a means-tested scheme, that would give them the feeling that they are sharing in the fruits of prosperity in society. We want elderly people to have a comfortable life. But then what we see now is cleaners who are 65 years of age are still earning a meager income, and conceptually they don't want to get resources from society. We are not talking about getting resources from society, but rather sharing the resources and fruits of prosperity in society. I hope you will now deliver your promise that we should have universal retirement protection. Next, from professional comments, Mr. George Cawthorley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members. After studying and considering Professor Nelson Chow's research report on the future development of retirement protection in Hong Kong, as the recommendations made by the report encompass the same principles as those that underpin the proposal put forward by the Professional Commons, our organisation is prepared to fully support Professor Chow's demo grant recommendations in preference to our own. Moreover, we would strongly urge those organisations at least which are proposing versions of a mandatory old age pension to do the same. Having stated our new position, we would still like to make some general comments. Firstly, there seems a tendency for some sectors
首先呢，就係社會有一啲部分呢，就係覺得呢一個呢，其實係社會嘅一個成本，但係其實呢，呢個退休基金呢，係可以刺激經濟嘅。喺咁樣嘅分析底下呢，我哋呢係請大家睇睇中央政策組係講到銀髮嘅分析，係喺舊年出嘅一個報告嚟嘅。其中一點呢，就係向政府呢係呼籲呢係提供一個計劃嚟到保障退休同埋係增加老人家嘅消費能力嘅。咁至於係頭先講過有關最低工資嗰方面呢，我哋知道呢而家係有通脹喺32.5呢一個。
Than the original minimum wage of Hong Kong dollars $28 an hour introduced in May 2011, an outcome which is strongly to be deplored. The second point we would like to make and address to those who support a means-tested supplement to the current retirement protection regime as being a preferable enhancement to the introduction of a mandatory old age pension or demo grant is that in its evaluation of retirement protection options, Professor Chow's team calculated that there would be no great difference in the net cost to the community between a means-tested supplement to the current retirement protection regime and the implementation of a demo grant. The final point we would like to make is that the contributions made towards retirement protection in Hong Kong is towards the lower end of the table when compared to other jurisdictions. For instance, in Singapore, CPF contributions range from 12% of salary for employees aged 55 to 60 years up to 23% of salary for employees aged below 35 years for ordinary account only. And then there are additional employee contributions for special account and MediSave, while in employer contributions run from 12% of salary for employees aged 55 to 60 up to 17% for employees aged below 35 years. Those of us with businesses in China are paying upwards of 20% of salary as employers' contributions, depending on the province and city in which our businesses are located. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. 好，多謝啊。
Thank you. Now, all three organizations have spoken. I would like to know from members, would you want the members to respond with questions or opinions, or do you want the administration, the secretary, to respond? Perhaps the secretary? Yes, perhaps on the three questions raised by the deputations. Well, first of all, on the Federation's questions concerning inviting for interaction with the COP. As I have mentioned to Dr. Cheung just now, yes, I will bring that back to the COP for consideration. Now, as for the 6+1 proposal, whether this will be included in the consultation, well, in fact, we are exactly speaking about or discussing the framework and also the content of the consultation. And the inclination had been that there should be mention in the consultation. And the 6+1 proposal's data is exactly what we have to hark back on. And this is the census and statistics data, relevant data as well. But how exactly it should be contained in the consultation, we'll have to further deliberate. And that is the reason why the subcommittee will have a lot of work going forward. How do we actually go about the consultation, the content, etc.? And we will start with that discussion next week. Yes, as for Professor Chow's analysis, if there should be any renewal of data, we will of course include that. And for any new information from it or data coming from the government, those should be taken into account in a certain way for the people of Hong Kong to consider. But as I said, that will be discussed in the subcommittee's meeting. Now, as for the Federation's question concerning retirement provision and protection, as you know, Mr. Kwan, this is a highly complex and controversial issue. In fact, for this session of the government, we have made a big stride forward in terms of examination and discussion, and there had been follow-up work by the COP as well. I can tell you that the COP had been working and having very regular, frequent meetings. And this is a very complex issue indeed, retirement protection. And we need a lot of very detailed analysis and also very rational discussion within the community. And that's why we need the time and the space to do the preparation. There's one other question concerning inviting organizations to talk about or express their opinions on the annuity and talking to the COP directly. Yes, as I have mentioned, Madam Chair, we will have a meeting at the COP next week, and I will raise this with the COP, bringing this suggestion back to the COP. I am a member of the COP. Yes, and the CS is the chair. Of course, the CS will be there. Well, what I'm saying is that you should go to the CS today. And we should be listening to other views as well, apart from Dr. Law's proposal. And the COP should listen to all these views rather than to come up with rounds and rounds of meeting. Why can't you answer that question right now? Madam Chair, I did say that I will bring this back to the COP, also to the chairman, who is the CS, and also bring it up at next week's meeting at the COP. All right. Now, the Federation's question concerning whether you can consider not including other issues, for example, MPF review, etc., not to put that into the consultation as well. What do you think about that? Well, as I've mentioned, Madam Chair, yes, the committee is looking into the framework and the ambit of the consultation. I cannot make any undertaking here as an individual. I'm a member of the committee. I cannot make any undertaking here at this meeting. Yes. Even though you have responded to Mr. Kwan of the Federation, I do not know whether Mr. Kwan feels that your questions have been answered. Do you want to follow up? But before that, I would like to ask the other two deputations bodies, do you have any? Well, Madam Chair, actually, thank you for your invitation. I don't think Mr. Cheung had addressed our worries. If Dr. Law is to go up to the committee to talk about the annuity proposal, the other organizations should also be invited to talk about their proposals to the COP. And otherwise, this will be evidence of being partial to certain parties and being selective in hearing. Before there is a result to the consultation, for so doing by the government is highly problematic. And our federation, we come to the LegCo to listen to any such discussions concerning old age or retirement provisions. And all along, we have heard about, well, OAA, other pillars, and private insurance policies, government allowances, etc. It shows that the government has no sincerity in undertaking the financing or undertaking detailed discussions on the financing of universal retirement protection. So if that is the case, there will be no consensus at the end of the day if that is the stance that they take in coming up with the consultation. Even though Dr. Law is not here today at this meeting, but there is a PowerPoint, we would want to respond to some of the content in that PowerPoint. We also see that the proposal, that is a public annuity proposal of Dr. Law, there is a mandatory element to it, and that is every citizen of Hong Kong. Mr. Chan, please do be fair. We are not to speak on the proposal today. Madam Chair, if you allow me 1 minute, we doubt the feasibility of this and also the sustainability. If the government is to foot the bill in the final analysis, public expenditure will be very high. And given that, there should be an invitation of all relevant organizations to speak about their opinions. Well, I would also want to point out that you can express your opinions to the relevant panels at the relevant meetings, but that is not the point of the meeting today, at this meeting. Yes, can we please be focused? Now, Madam Chair, as to some of the assumptions in Professor Chow's proposal, my worry is that if the government changes, let's say, the factor to be taken up by the government as part of the hypothesis, that will have very wide-ranging significance. I would want to remind the Secretary by saying that if you amend certain factors or data leading to the final analysis of unsustainability of universal retirement protection, and you bring this back to the COP, then you should remind your colleagues that when they do the calculations, they should take this into account. That is to say, it should be fair. A lot of people are very focused on the process. They cannot just secretively change any of the hypothetical data. Right. Mr. Secretary, your response, please. Well, I hear Mr. Lau very clearly. Yes, I will reflect this to the colleagues. Mr. Kwan, do you have any supplements, please? Madam Chair, yes, indeed, there are a number of areas and different factors concerned for universal retirement protection. But in the 1960s, 1970s, Hong Kong had been discussing exactly this subject. It is not a new subject. It's been a long time, taking into account the opinions of the entire community. So that's the first point to consider. Secondly, since Professor Chow has 3 proposals, and after adjustments, these proposals are feasible, and there is another proposal come up by Professor Chow himself. So there are altogether 4 proposals, and it is sustainable because after calculations we know that there is no bursting. It is sustainable. So why can we not just go to consultation on these proposals? Well, Mr. Kwan has pointed out the exact point which was addressed just now, and that is, in the next few months, there will be a lot of work to do to set out the framework and also the content of consultation. Please do not think that this is a very simple matter, the data, etc. And also the community of Hong Kong should be informed in their consultation and discussions. The relevant data and also the impact on future social development, on future the economics of Hong Kong, and also the financing of it. Yes, the Secretary had responded, and since the government had commissioned the professor with a great amount of money for him to conduct this work, and there has been a lot of discussions, but till now the government is saying as though nothing had happened and let's go back to the drawing board. Given that, don't you think the government should have certain explanation to this? I mean, not like what you're saying now. We all know in Hong Kong that this is complex. This is a complex issue, that there should be a very detailed consultation and a deep one.
And I think you will have to admit, Secretary, that over the last 2 decades, we have gone over the topic many times. We thought that by bringing in Dr. Nelson Chow, we thought you were going to make a decision finally so that the CE could also deliver what he promised in his platform. But no, that is not the case. You will seem to be restarting the entire process again. So, Secretary, if this is how you lead the Bureau and also as an important official beside the CS4A, I believe you are not with the people. What do you think? I'd like to emphasize a few things, Chairman. Number 1, this term of government places emphasis on retirement protection. I'd like to emphasize again that we invited Dr. Nelson Chow to do the study. We did not do so because we were under pressure, but we were proactive in inviting Dr. Chow to do the research. And the 6+1 option is a very solid foundation on which we can take another step and we can conduct public consultation. Of course, internally, we have to do a lot of analysis. And as you know, we have our own stance, we have our own views, but we know we should have an open mind, and at the COP we can have brainstorming sessions. Every time the COP hosts a meeting, I go, and I also come here every time to the subcommittee. So please do give us some time, because after all, we are going to launch public consultation at the end of the year. It is going to be a comprehensive consultation on the framework, on the contents of the options, and also at the meeting next week, I will brief the COP on all these views, so there will be more communication. And also, we have put aside $50 billion. All that is an expression of the sincerity of the government. It is not that we just listen to you and then we approach it as a PR exercise. No, we actually want to do consultation. We are also putting aside resources for the purpose. Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Chan? Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to clarify. Is it that at the meeting we invited COP members to come? because last time we said that we would like to invite COP members to this meeting. And what about the way forward? Chairman, I agree with you that we'd like to have a direct dialogue, but every time we only see the Secretary for Labour and Welfare. I think this does not help in any way direct communication. So first, to clarify, did we invite COP members to the meeting today, and what about our future meetings? And also, Secretary, when you responded on the 6+1 option, you said you are still looking into the framework and you are going to respond later. I'd like to ask you to clarify, what do you mean by you are going to account for that later? First of all, COP members, theoretically, we put forward that view last time. What was the reaction of COP members? Were they happy to come to the meeting today? Chairman, it is up to the individual members of COP to make their individual decision. You were inviting members as individuals through the Secretariat. We were not tasked to issue the invitations. Every time we reflect your views at the COP, I act as a bridge. That is why, because I come here every time and I attend every COP meeting, we give an account of your views to the COP every time. Thank you. Any other views? No, what about the 6+1 option? You said you would give an account of it. What do you mean by giving an account on it? Is it that you are going to put forward that as an option for public consultation? Secretary, as I said, we already said that we would update the financial estimates for the 6+1 option. We would be making use of the projections till 2046 to be issued by the CNSD so that we can update the proposals made by you, including that of the Alliance, the FTU, and the Professional Commons. We want to make use of those data to update your proposals. Certainly, we need to update the data of the 6+1 option as well. Sorry, Mr. Lam? Also, is it that after updating the data, you will also release them? Or is it that you would report progress to the Legislative Council? Because frankly speaking, we have no confidence in you because you were quoting the wrong figures. C.Y. Leung said that by 2050, he said, according to Dr. Chow's report, the horizon for projection was 2050, but that is clearly wrong. Therefore, if you have certain updating or progress, you should actually regularly report to Legislative Council and release the data to the public. And don't only release the figures when you do the consultation exercise, and then only by then we see that the data are all wrong. Because in that way, you're not going to have an effective consultation. I have heard Mr. Lau. I will talk to my colleagues how to do the updating work. Okay, thank you. I have heard the Secretary say a few times that he would update the data of the options, but I haven't heard him say whether all the options would be put out for public consultation. Secretary, we said that the COP is still discussing the framework and also contents of the options, but I can tell you that as the Secretary, my inclination is that we should update the data for the 6+1 option first. Okay, I think we have already listened to the Secretary, and I think the floor should be open to members now. Dr. Fernando Zhang first, 5 minutes each. Thank you, Chairman, and I thank the deputations for coming, for detailing their options to us. I think they have asked many reasonable questions. The Secretary said he would go back and reflect views. But you are not just a courier, Mr. Secretary. You are the head of the Bureau. You are responsible for labor and welfare policies. I think you should be braver. We have an aging population problem, and we need to tackle universal retirement protection, and we cannot wait any longer. Of course, you have been dragging your feet, and now you say you would have consultation done at the end of the year, and you say you are working continuously on this. Now, I have heard deputations say that in that consultation exercise, you might include a review on the MPF or even elderly CSSA. I want the Secretary to clarify this. You say you are still working hard to set up the framework and contents for the consultation exercise. Are you going to include a review on MPF and elderly CSSA? Secretary, in the past few months, Chairman, the COP were looking at the different pillars, the operation and the effectiveness of the pillars. We have the 4 pillars in Hong Kong. But I'd like to say again that starting from next week, we have to talk about the framework and contents. Today, it is the first time I have heard you say that we should not lump CSSA and MPF together with the consultation. This is what is said by you, Dr. Zhang, and the Alliance. I will reflect these views to the COP next week. I would tell them that this is the view of an organization and also some members. Well, okay, Secretary, you are always only listening to views. And if you want to start the discussion of the 5 pillars all over again, I'm sure it is going to take very, very long. The 5 pillars include so many things. It should also include non-cash protection. The last pillar is about medical and social welfare and neighborhood and family support, etc. But how long is it going to take? I think you know the views of the community well. Today we see many elderly people living in poverty. Universal retirement protection itself is not really a tool to alleviate poverty, but it has that effect. Many overseas studies have pointed out that if retirement protection is provided universally, it will help the most the elderly poor problem. And basically, we can, in fact, eradicate the elderly poor problem. As long as if the payment is above the poverty line, then no elderly people will still be poor. It's as simple as that. If it is universal, then you are going to cover everybody in society. And that is so easy to understand. It's so clear. Now 30% of our elderly people are still living in poverty. And we know whether you talk about the living environment and their daily living, whether they're in an institution or in the community, they still have to pick. They are still collecting cartons in the streets, but you are refusing to move faster. I really doubt what role you are playing as a bureau. You always say you listen to views, but in fact the community and the LegCo have put forward so many views, and the consensus is quite clear. We have done many opinion surveys amongst the public, and we know the direction that is shown, and Dr. Chow's report has also shown a very clear direction. His conclusion is clear. If you still go for a means-tested option, there will be continuous debate. So Dr. Chow has concluded that it should be universal. Now, when can you give us a clear framework for consultation so that we will know about it? As I said, I have already said that by the end of the year we will launch the consultation. you asked all these questions, and those will be included in the consultation paper. We hope there will be an in-depth discussion in society so we know how to chart the way forward. Dr. Fernando Zhang, between now and the end of the year, I don't understand what are we waiting for. Well, waiting for the data. No, he should have got the data in April. He said, Secretary, can you answer that question? What are we waiting for? Let me talk about the timetable again. Later on, we believe the CNSD will be releasing new data before the end of the third quarter, that is by the end of September. They update the data every 2-3 years. It's not for our sake, but they always do this kind of large-scale population projection. This time around, they're going to project till 2046, sorry. And they are also going to project the labor population. Since we know we are aging fast as a community, now we have 1.1 million people who are elderly, and that is 1 in 7. But 25 years later, the number will rise to 2.6 million, meaning 1 in 3. And starting from 2018, we will have a decrease of the working population by 200,000 between 2018 and 2035. In other words, only by 2037 that the working population will gradually pick up. So there will be an impact on the funding of the universal scheme, and also the dependence ratio would also change. One working person may have to sustain 2 dependents, and then later on 2 working people will have to sustain 5 dependents, etc. In other words, the working population will shrink, economic activities will shrink, fewer people will be paying taxes, and also there will be a problem with economic increase. We have to have those data after the CNSD report is out so that we can do our own financial estimation and also update the data in the 6+1 option.
This consultation, we would want it to be a comprehensive one, a thorough one, that there is maximum transparency for the community of Hong Kong because everybody is concerned, and we want to know the direction into the future. So definitely, for all the deputations here today, including the Federation, you have voiced your opinions over the past period of time, and we find that those opinions very valuable. Mr. Leung. Madam Chair, towards the end of the 1980s, nobody was talking about retirement protection. Or in the early 1990s, in Tung Chee-hwa's time, there was talk of poverty alleviation, and he asked Tam Yu-chung to come up with a old age welfare committee. Now, all that had come to naught. You at the government administration had been slow in coming up with anything substantive at all. And you have been using nothing but your own resources at the government to come up with results. And what are the results? Tam Yu-chung at the time said $2,300 without any means test. And think about it, that was in the 1990s. The purchasing power is very deficient. It is insufficient in today's money terms. Now, you are the present government. We're talking about Tung Chee-hwa days, and he exited because of foot pain, he says. And then we have C.Y. Leung now. Of course, Tung Chee-hwa appointed C.Y. Leung as the chair of the EXCO. And C.Y. Leung is now dragging his feet. You are dragging your feet. The more you drag your feet, the more difficult it is to resolve this issue. Because the world is in such a state where the retirement protection is in such a deplorable state. In Hong Kong, among the advanced societies around the world, we are in the least developed. And the coefficient measuring the gap between the rich and the poor is at its highest among the developed cities and countries around the world. And if the stock market crashes, I mean H shares and A shares, and you have no funds, what will you be able to do then? You should grasp the opportunity now that the government has reserves and funds to do something. You are using the COP as a defense, as a shield. But, you know, this is the list of members, the CS, Mr. Chan Tak-sing of the and yourself, and also Education Secretary, Mr. Ng, and also FEHD, Dr. Ko. Well, the CS and 4 department heads are present at the COP as members. And then who are the others? Lau Ming-wei, Chen Ka-shen, second generation rich in Hong Kong. Why are they relevant? Because the tax will have to be higher. Now, 1% raise in tax is of course not acceptable to them. This is the basic law. The chief executive with the EXCO and the government administration. What is your responsibility? This is squarely on your plate, and you do not use the COP as the shield. Article 48, that the administration should execute or implement the laws as promulgated, or as passed rather, by the LegCo. We pass the legislation and you implement the relevant measures. That's your duty. For how long can you delay this further? Will it be within the term of the present CE, Leung Chun-ying? If that is the case, then it is a countdown, I can tell you. Now, my question to you is very direct. C.Y. Leung, does he want to or do not want to materialize this within, that is, retirement protection, within his term? And the CS, Ms. Carrie Lam, is a head chair of this committee. None of them are present here. None among the COP members, not the CS, not the other 4 departments. None of them are here. This is the government's representation in the COP. You have representation in the COP, Mr. Cheung. Do you have a question for Mr. Cheung, Mr. Lam? Well, I'm asking him the question, within this term of the CE or not? That is my question. Well, the government is doing all sorts of things that are not necessary. Going around to sweep the city, sweeping the pavements, all these nonsense. Now, August is the most important time, and the CS is saying that she's going to sweep the streets. And there is this poisonous water in the estates, housing estates. And I'm sure Mr. Chan Tak-sing, another head of the department, will not have time. Now, all these government officials sitting on the COP will not have time, and they will not be coming to our meetings, but they're doing all sorts of things which are unnecessary. My question is, within this term of the CE or not? Well, Mr. Leung, please do allow him time for answer. Mr. Leung, I am chairing the meeting. If you will allow time for the answer. Mr. Cheung, please. Madam Chair, there are 2 points that the government is very concerned about. One, retirement, old age retirement. This is very important. Otherwise, we will not be earmarking 50 billion Hong Kong dollars as to provide for future needs of citizens after retirement. That for one. And secondly, the constitution of the COP, he's missed out a number of members. Zhang Kwok-chu, Fong Kim Kei, who are LegCo members, are also members of the COP. Mr. Leung, please allow time for the answer. And also, certain grassroots representatives, labor union representatives, grassroots organizations representatives. So this is a comprehensive list for everybody's information. Mr. Leung Kwok-yin, Lau Ming-wei and Chen Ka-shun, they will oppose well, he's not answered the question. Is it going to be within this term of the CE? Will this be passed? Well, he's not answered that question. I'm leaving. Well, thank you for the deputations for coming up. Professor Cheung had put in a lot of time and effort in his work. Now, I think in principle you are not in opposition of Professor Chow and his team's proposal. And as for the timetable and route map mentioned by the Secretary, Mr. Cheung, now, if I can just clarify. Now, all along in the past meetings, Madam Chair, as you know, we have been trying to expedite the process so that there can be early consultation. And just now we heard that the Census and Statistics Department will come up with the new data in September. And after that, we will have the 2064 projections for Hong Kong population. I do not know whether I've heard wrongly, and that is Professor Chow's numbers will be reviewed and adjusted. Is that true? Or are you saying that you will be putting in those data from the CNS into the proposals? And then the consultation will be in 2016. Of course, I do not want the consultation to be overly complex with too many proposals so that the citizens of Hong Kong actually do not know how to go about discussing and analyzing them. And then I remember there was this all population and not all population proposals. I have a couple of questions. First of all, how long will the consultation be, and what would be your selection criteria for inclusion into the consultation? Now, you've talked about the insurance industry and Dr. Law, etc. I think if we are all too wide-ranging, it will be difficult for there to be meaningful discussion at consultation. And what about the route map? By the end of October, you should have done all the preparation work. Is that right? And how long is a consultation going to be? 1 month, 3 months? And what is the work after that? Madam Chair, what Mr. Poon had mentioned just now is exactly what we need to discuss, include in the coming time, especially the consultation period. But we want to prepare all the work, do all the preparation for the consultation from now till the end of the year and be able to conduct the consultation before the end of the year this year. That is our purpose. That is our objective. And also, in setting out the consultation paper, we would want there to be digestible information for the public so that there can be meaningful discussion during the consultation. And the COP feels that this 6+1, well, my personal view is that there should be an inclusion of the 6+1. And updating of data is not just the updating of Professor Chow's proposal, but also for others as well. Now, for example, the Federation, the New Citizens Party, the Professionals Association, etc. Though the other proposals, how would they adjust after the new data had come out from the Census and Statistics Department? Now, for all population and non-all population, the latter would mean means tested, and there will have to be laying out of the difference between the two and also what it entails in terms of mechanism, measures. I mean, all these need to be clearly set out for the public's consumption and then discussion. So it will have to be objective, and we will have to lay out all the pros and cons as well. And that is why the preparation work is so heavy. So you're saying 6+1? Plus non-population-wide etc., etc. So I can foresee a lot of proposals in the consultation paper. Now, Professor Chow is saying that given the social, economic environment in Hong Kong, the most acceptable proposal would be the universal retirement protection. Now, Professor Chow already has that set out as his consideration. But what I heard from you, Mr. Cheung, is going to be a very lengthy and complex consultation paper. So how long will the consultation period be? Well, Madam Chair, addressing Mr. Poon's question, exactly so, that because of proposals, the proposers would want us to include the proposals into the consultation paper, whether it should be in the form of an annex or whatever, that remains to be discussed. But on the other hand, given the new data coming out from the Census and Statistics Department, you would, I presume, want to update your own proposals. But I would agree with you that the consultation paper will have to be streamlined as much as possible because it will be very difficult for the people of Hong Kong to digest. Well, actually, I can respond to your question. In fact, it was very complex. In fact, it's been streamlined a lot in recent times. But what the effort lead to will be a re-complication of the content, and that is a very deplorable situation. Yip Chi Ming, please, next. Madam Chair, thank you. I would want to reiterate the Liberal Party's stance concerning the retirement protection. To provide for the aged is something that is only right, especially for a affluent society such as Hong Kong. But as pointed out just now, the financial burden for society in the future for such a heavy burden is something that we're worried about. So whether this should be universal or not universal, I think a means test is important and is desirable. For those who have the means, they should shoulder more of the burden. Not that we do not want to spend the money for providing the aged, but it should be spent right, the money. Now, whether this is universal or not universal, I'm very interested in that. What I'm also interested in is where does the finance come from? Where does the money come from?
I'd like you to show me the sensitivity analysis because now you have put aside $50 billion in a fund, and when you re-evaluate the data, I'd like you to tell us whether it is okay for you to inflate the amount to 60 billion or 70 billion since we have a big surplus. You look at the options, 50 billion will just not be able to make any of them sustainable. I hope you can relax the boundaries, and when you have done your sensitivity analysis, I hope you can allow the fund to include a bigger amount. Dr. Chow says if 3,000 odd dollars is distributed to everyone. If you ask me, it is not enough to sustain any elderly person in their daily living because we have such inflation. I hope you can do different analyses when you do your projections. Whatever you do, I think the most important point is for us to convince ourselves that we are really helping those in need. And I have to emphasize, we don't support the universal concept. I think we have neglected another point. Just now, elderly people asking for CSSA must have their children sign a certificate of not supporting them. But then if you have a means-tested retirement protection scheme, then you can do away with this. You don't need to require the children to sign a certificate of not supporting their parents. Secretary, thank you, Mr. Yik, for your views. I think Mr. Yik reflects the views of certain sectors in the community that they are concerned about sustainability of the options if the option does not include a means test. We are talking about long-term sustainability, and also with a drop in the working population, we can expect less tax income. And the economy itself will also shrink. All these will be looked into by the Hong government economist and using new data. And you talked about sensitivity analyses will certainly reflect your view to the experts. Mr. Tam Yu Chung. I think we have really talked about retirement protection for very, very long. It has proved to be very controversial, especially whether it should be made universal. Before we have had MPF, we have already discussed this for a long time. For the DAB, if there is no means test, if it is available to everyone, and if no contribution is required, well, that would be the best scenario. That would be the ideal. But of course, you will ask me, where does the money come from? The money, of course, would come from the government, employers, and employees. I think everybody has to make some contribution before we can resolve the funding problem. As for whether it should be universal, if we are worried, if we can't balance the equation, then the DAB would support certain asset limitations. We think we can consider that. But then I think you should relax the requirements. When someone is less economically able, the person should be able to get more help. I think that is the spirit. We have also forwarded our formal proposal to government, and we have introduced it at LegCo. And I have discovered this recently. Since MPF is not working satisfactorily, meaning that if people go for high-risk investment, they in fact can lose out, especially if the investment is made in the stock market, which is so volatile. But even if you go for low-risk investment, still you can sustain a loss because the investment funds would charge an administrative charge. That is why people think the MPF is not functioning in an ideal manner. Of course, that is not part of your portfolio, Secretary, but the entire government, the government as a whole, should think about this. Since it is mandatory, you have to think about a way to allow people to have a low but stable return. I don't think you should allow funds to charge administrative fees which can actually eat into the capital amount of contributions. This is money for the workers when they retire. And also, people will get the accrued benefits upon retirement. It may be tens of thousands of money, but then upon retirement, the workers would want the government also to give them a helping hand. The accrued benefits that they can get from MPF will be limited in amount, and they are worried about their retirement life. And they would also want to have universal retirement protection, which can give them $3,000 a month. Because people are living longer now, many people have retired even before they are 65, and with a limited amount from MPF and not knowing for how much longer they are going to live, maybe 20 years easily and even much longer, they are really worried about supporting themselves, and they want more protection. I think that is only normal, isn't it? So they want you to relax the asset test so they have a bigger safety net. Sometimes I tell them, if your assets decrease, in the end you would become eligible for government assistance, but still they feel insecure. They would like to be reassured of government support. So they want you to relax the means test. Well, the best is to do away with it. But of course, they know that would be too difficult. So they want some relaxation. And my question for you is that you should seek to reassure them so they do not feel insecure after retirement. Can I defer to Ms. Wendy Chung, who can speak on MPF? Can I please ask Ms. Chung to say something? Yes, please. Thank you, Chairman. With regard to investment return and administrative charges under MPF, I'd like to say this. In terms of return, the MPF is some kind of long-term investment, and the investment term can be as long as 40 years. It's one kind of retirement protection, and the economic cycle, even global finances and short-term market volatilities can all affect the return rate. So we should look at the long-term investment return instead of short-term returns. Secondly, according to MPFA, ever since the setup of MPF until May 2015, MPF contributions have risen to $635.9 billion. And after discounting fees and charges, the return rate stands at 5.1%, exceeding the rise in CPI of 1.7% for the same period. As for fees and charges, at an earlier meeting of this subcommittee, we already said that the MPFA and the government are following up on different measures in order to reduce fees charged for MPF management, also to allow employees to do more in managing their contributions. Earlier on, we have the portability scheme, the half portability scheme, or employee choice scheme. Now, there are 170 low-charging funds in the market. In order to take this even further, on the 6th of this month at the Financial Affairs Panel, we introduced that the government and the MPFA would like to introduce fee control in 2016 and also to introduce the core fund option. We hope by adopting these measures, we can further suppress the fees and charges. Thank you. Secretary, anything else from you? Nothing from me. Okay. Next. I can see that someone from the deputations would like to say something. Mr. Chan, 3 minutes for you. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask 4 questions. This is to supplement members' questions. Someone talked about financial sustainability. In Dr. Chow's report, the projection is, supposing we keep the existing scheme, by 2041, the government will have to pay out $48.5 billion. What do you think if you question the sustainability of universal retirement protection? Now, if we don't go for a universal scheme, if we only rely on government resources, still in 2014, the government will have to pay out $48.5 billion. What do you think about this? And also, we have asked whether this term of government is sincere in introducing universal retirement protection. When the CS4A was interviewed by newspapers on the 12th of June, she said that universal retirement protection would probably not be possible within this term of government. So are you dragging your feet? Number 3, Secretary, you said that the framework for consultation would include a universal scheme versus one that is not universal. I think that goes right against what we have said. We said that Dr. Chow's 6+1 option should be the basis for consultation, because those would include universal and non-universal schemes. But if Secretary, if you only put out to the public one universal scheme and one non-universal scheme, you are in fact just introducing conflicts in society. Please leave some time for the Secretary to answer your questions. Number 4, can you publish the framework earlier on? Can you publish it in September instead of December? Okay, Secretary, short answers, please. with regard to figures like $48.5 billion, etc., I need to wait for updated data before I can respond to that point. I don't think I should arbitrarily comment on Dr. Nelson Chow's views. In fact, some of our colleagues are also actuaries, and they have their own views. But today we are not debating Dr. Chow's figures because we respect his research. Secondly, when can we publish the framework? In the coming 2-3 months, we have to decide on a lot of things because we don't have a lot of time. In September, when we have updated data from the CS&D, we have to do financial assessment. So we don't have a lot of time. We will work against very tight timetables. And about the CS4A's views, of course, she only represents herself, but we will certainly try to do more with limited time. Can I supplement? Sorry, because of time constraint, we have to vacate the venue by 4:30 because we have a finance committee meeting. Mr. Kwan, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to remind the Secretary that I feel that the atmosphere at this meeting is to badmouth universal retirement protection instead of supporting universal retirement protection. When we talked about asset or means test, the Secretary would say it is not sustainable. But then the Secretary also said that universal retirement can help the elderly people and it can help to alleviate poverty, etc. So even if you would put out the 6+1 option for consultation, I hope you will also tell people a balanced view. In other words, if in the consultation paper you are going to talk about non-sustainability of the scheme, you should also speak in favor of it so as to balance the situation. Secondly, if you wait for one more day to implement universal retirement protection, elderly people are suffering more in their retirement because we are sitting in an AC room enjoying ourselves, but then elderly people are in dire straits. Secretary, is it that you always give people the feeling that you are not balanced? Well, I never used the word bursting or depletion or non-sustainability. I never used such a term. I was just saying that some people in the community are worried about financial sustainability. I said that was the view from the community. I'm very careful with my wording, and I'm very balanced in my view. Second question, why don't you want to help the elderly more? I don't think you can answer the question.
Well, actually, if I can just spend 1 minute on responding to that point. Well, from the start, we have met with a lot of challenges, and that's why we have the $2,390 available to 420,000 and old people. 160,000 of them are also do avail themselves to the ASS, or the old age OAA. And we are really talking about some 80% of the old age people who are who are benefiting from the old age benefits. Now, 420,000, you may say that that's not a big number, but really 80% of the old age people in Hong Kong are actually covered by one of the benefits from the government. Now we're talking about 40 billion plus. And what is the arrangement for the future? We are saying that if we do something in the future, we will have to be very wary of risk management. If we go by the second route, that is do nothing in terms of universal retirement protection, the government will have to come up with funds to provide for the old age people. Now, for the low income earners, getting CSSA, it would create such a big financial burden to the government that it would collapse the entire social security system. Now, those are different directions, different views that we have to take into account. Now, perhaps we should go to, we can have 3 minutes for Liu Chuk-Kei, please. Lau Chuk-Kei, please. Well, the PowerPoint just now said that there is 127 billion left. But Mr. Yip here, we just heard him saying time and again that it is not sustainable, universal retirement protection. In fact, Professor Chow's report contains an analysis. Now, if you're saying that he is to do his maths and assessments, well, he's already responded. That he's saying that the actuarials stand ready. Now, why is it that there is already a sensitivity analysis in Professor Chow's report, and you still want to replicate that effort and say that you have economists who will be coming up with new data and new analysis? Well, if I can be frank, do not know whether you will be tweaking unduly the data in the report from Professor Nelson Chow. And who are the economists? Madam Chair, I'm saying that I'm not undertaking that there will be stress tests, but what I'm saying is that there are colleagues who are economists who will be working on this, and when we have the data, the new data coming out, I think all will agree that there may be a review so as to see that the data is relevant and it is fair. And I will also bring this back to the COP, as I've mentioned just now. Now, I think the Secretary had emphasized that there is the OAA and also however, with the measures coming out from the government to assist the poor, the old age poor, there is 1 in 3 old people in Hong Kong who are living under the poverty line or living in poverty. So that has not been addressed. The question was whether there is going to be a roadmap for and framework for retirement protection. Now, Madam Chair, if you can allow me 30 seconds responding to the point. Yes, indeed, it's dropped from 44% to 33.3% for old age living in poverty. But when we say 1/3 of the old age are in poverty, we are only talking about their income. But in fact, we have a lot of old people who own their own property. They do not have a lot of cash, but they have assets. They have assets, but no cash. But does this reflect that they are living in poverty? When we say poverty and set the poverty line, if we only refer to the income, that is in itself distorting, because not all 33.3% of the old age falling into falling under the poverty line are in fact poor, because they may actually have assets, they only do not have a lot of income. Mr. Leung. What we need to resolve, given that we have so much reserves, the problem actually lies in what we collect on the one hand and how we expend that collection on the other. After the contribution to a fund, retirement fund, for some, and on the other hand, the fund is to be payable or shareable for all, including those who have not contributed to the fund. The fear is that that creates a bottleneck. But what we are looking at is that you have 90 billion or 80 billion as it is now. And why don't we solve the problem now that we have the resources? The calculations have been made and laid out to you. You can at least say whether the calculations are fair or not. And since we have the resources, we should do something now. The economy, the economic cycle is getting tighter and shorter and shorter. 1997, 2008, there were different rounds of financial crisis. Do you want to wait for the next crisis when you have no money? What can you do then? Do not forget that these people we are talking about are people who have contributed with sweat and blood to the prosperity of Hong Kong. These are not strangers to us. They are our seniors. It is not pious, it is not kind, and it is not fair for the administration not to take care of these people who have contributed to us. My parents, for example, if they have no livelihood, I can even go to the loan sharks. I will even go to the loan sharks so that they can have sustenance. All these officials, are you saying that if your parents are ill and need to go to the hospital and you say, well, let them die, let them go through the surgery, and I don't care. Well, you have so much money in terms of reserves. These old people are like your father and your mother. They are ill. They cannot undergo the necessary surgeries. They're suffering every day. Go to Yong Ki in Central, opposite Yong Ki, the street. Well, take your turn. Go see that old lady picking up rubbish every day at 10 a.m. Go see that. Well, we have a few more minutes to the meeting. If I can have the Secretary respond to the following. Well, when you go back, please tell Ms. Carrie Lam, the chairman of the COP, that this panel will have a meeting in September. And when the department provides you with the new census and statistics data, provide us with the data at the same time as they provide the COP. And then we will together come up with a way forward. And secondly, for the consultation period, apparently this will start at the end of the year. What exactly is a timetable? Also, for the LegCo, the session ends at July. Now, let's say if you use 2 months, but I think you're going to drag your feet even more than that, you need to allow time, what I'm saying is, for the work of the LegCo. Now, for those members who are in favor, or even though for those who are not in favor of universal retirement protection, everybody do not want to see any further dragging on of the issue, even the Liberal Party. So let's say you make your preparations and then you lay out all clearly. Let us not wait for the next LegCo session. I mean, if we do delay any further, it is going to be punitive on us. Different parties represented in the LegCo are in unison, urging you not to drag your feet. And hopefully by the early next year, we'll be able to come up with substantive work. And further, if you can, the administration abide with our wish, and that is, even for the financial projections, members are of different views. However, they roughly fall into 2 schools. And Mr. Yik, I would want to say to you, for the 6 proposals, there are some which are in line with your thoughts. Let us not make another proposal 7, proposal 8, and so on and so forth. Yes, we need to review the MPF scheme. And if universal retirement protection will indeed come to pass, and the MPF will also be restructured. But if you want to take this opportunity to restructure other things, then you're only complicating issues. As for the non-provision for parents signing or form, and also the cancellation of that we should leave it to Dr. K.K. Chan and Mr. Chung here. So we need to be focused. Do not commingle things. Now, if I can just provide that as a small conclusion, as of this point in time in the LegCo session, of course we're not satisfied, and we can do nothing but to accept what is meted out to us. But again, I would urge the administration not to drag the feet. A couple of months, all it takes to prepare for the consultation and get on with it. I'm looking at Mr. Yik now, actually. Madam Chair, as I have said, for cancellation of the non-provision for parents' declaration, I'm for that. But as for the offsetting, cancellation of offsetting, I have a problem with that. No, Mr. Yik, we are not going to talk about that, because if we are to complicate this with other things, this will take us to eternity for discussions. What we want to focus on is retirement protection. You and us, whether you support universal protection or not, and us who support universal protection, we are in unison in our urge to the government for speedy work. Thank you very much for coming to the meeting. Thank you for those in the galleys. Thank you for coming.